Imagine two people waking up in the same morning. The first is a senior portfolio manager. She lives in Connecticut. Her retirement account is spread across equities, bonds, and real assets. She has advisors, she has options, she has time. The second is a single mother in Memphis. She works two jobs. Her household budget has no margin. She buys what she needs when she needs it, most of it imported, most of it is affected by what is about to happen. On April the 2nd, 2025, both their lives changed. The policy called Liberation Day hit both of them. 6 months later, the portfolio manager had fully recovered. The mother in Memphis was still paying for it. This is coin in context, and today we tell you the story of two economies living inside the same country. As previously discussed on this channel, on April the 2nd, 2025, the president stood on the Rose Garden and announced a sweeping tariff on virtually every country that traded with the United States. The stated purpose: to protect American workers, rebuild American manufacturing, and force trading partners to come back to the table. Within 48 hours, global markets lost trillions, consumer confidence collapsed, forecasters began using the word recession. But beneath the market drama, something quieter and more permanent was happening. According to analysis by the Women's Institute for Science, equity and race, wiser policy, Liberation Day's tariff reduced the disposable income of the American household by $1,500 and $2,000. For the family living close to the margin, $1,500 a month in rent in many cities. It is a car payment. It's the difference between keeping the lights on and making a choice. Across America, researchers estimated that Liberation Day pushed around 7.37 million people below the poverty line. 7,370,000 people. Almost all of them were already in the lowest income quintile. Almost all of them had no financial buffer. Almost all of them had no ability to substitute away from the goods that became more expensive overnight. This was not the unfortunate side effect. This was the predictable mathematical consequence of a regressive price increase on the goods that poor people cannot stop buying. Here is the part of the story that tells you everything about how wealth actually works. When Liberation Day tariff crashed the stock market in April 2025, wealthy Americans with large portfolios watched their net worth fall on paper. By autumn 2025, the US stock market had fully recovered. JP Morgan's private bank research was explicit. Investors who stayed in the market through Liberation Day volatility had fully recouped their losses within months. For the wealthy, Liberation Day was a dip, a stressful quarter, a conversation with the financial advisor. For the 7.37 million people pushed into poverty, it was not a dip. The prices did not come back down. The Supreme Court may have ruled that the tariffs were unconstitutional, but the inflation they caused had already moved into the economy, into the supply chain, into the prices on the shelf. You cannot unraise a price with a court ruling. This is the fundamental asymmetry of wealth in a shock event. When the financial crisis hits, wealthy people have diversified assets. Some fall, others hold, some rise. They have emergency funds, they have access to credit and favorable rates. They have advisors paid to anticipate exactly this kind of event. When a financial crisis hits ordinary households, there is no buffer. There is the job, the bill, and the choice. Let's follow the money through the mathematics of regressive policy, because the wealth gap revealed by Liberation Day was not an accident. It was arithmetic. Single parent household, 81% of which are headed by women, spend approximately 40% of their disposable income on goods, consumer goods, food, household products, clothing. The wealthiest American households spend around 20% of their income on the same category. Now apply a tariff-driven price increase to both. A 10% price rise on goods hits a single mother for 4% of her income. It hits a wealthy household for 2%. Same policy, double the proportional cost every time. Economists call this regressive impact when a tax or price change takes a large share from those with less. The tariff regime was sold as protecting working class Americans, and yet the structure of every tariff on every imported good from every country is mechanically regressive. It's not a matter of intent, it's a matter of how price increase interacts with income levels. The people with the least ability to absorb the blow were hit the hardest. That is no political point. That is a mathematical problem. In February 2026, the United States Supreme Court delivered a ruling that in any normal news cycle would have dominated every front page for weeks. In a 6-3 decision, the court found that President Trump's use of an emergency power under the International Emergency Economic Power Act to impose the Liberation Day tariff was unconstitutional. The president did not have the legal authority to do what he did. By the time the ruling landed, the US government has collected nearly $200 billion from over 330,000 American businesses operating under the tariff costs that the Supreme Court said were illegitimately imposed. $166 billion to be exact. The legal battle over whether that money must be returned are now playing out across the federal court systems. But here is the question Coin in Context is asking, and it is not a rhetorical one. If the tariffs were unconstitutional, if the inflation they caused has already permanently raised prices, if the 7.37 million people pushed into poverty cannot be unpushed by a court ruling, who's making those people whole? Because the portfolio manager in Connecticut got her money back when the stock market recovered. The answer, as best as anyone can tell, is nobody. Liberation Day did not create the wealth gap, it exposed it. The Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report tells us that the top 1% of the global population owns 40% of all wealth on earth. The bottom 50% owns less than 2%. In America, the Federal Reserve's own distributional financial account shows that the top 10% of American households own approximately 67% of all household wealth. The number predated Liberation Day. They were outlasted. What Liberation Day did was compress the timeline. It made visible in the space of one announcement what normally takes years to notice. The wealthy adapted in a quarter, the poor are still paying. That compression, that visible, undeniable, data-backed two-speed recovery is the most important economic story of 2025. Because it shows something that is usually hidden inside gradual, invisible movements of statistics. It shows us that financial resilience is not equally distributed, that the capacity to weather a shock itself is a form of wealth, and that policies designed without understanding this will always hit the bottom harder than it hit the top. This is not a new discovery. Economists have known this for generations. What is new is that we now have the data in real time from a natural experiment that nobody chose to run. The Coin in Context financial lesson from Liberation Day is the most fundamental one this channel has ever given. Second time around. Financial resilience is not about income, it's about structure. The portfolio manager in Connecticut did not get through Liberation Day unscathed because she earned more. She got through it because of how her money was organized. She had an emergency fund, typically 3 to 6 months of living expenses, holding cash or liquid assets, separate from investment accounts. She had a diversified holdings, assets that do not all fall on the same time in the same direction. She had access to credit at rates that did not trap her. And she had financial literacy, the ability to understand what was happening and respond to it rationally than being buffeted by the event she could not interpret. These are not wealthy person tools. They are financial tools that require time and discipline to build, but they're available to anyone. Build an emergency fund first. Even $1,000 is the difference between a financial shock and a financial catastrophe. Even 3 months of expenses gives you options that do not exist without it. Understands the difference between regressive and progressive financial decisions. Tariffs are regressive. Index funds investing is not. It gives you access to the same wealth creation that large portfolios access at any income level. Seek financial education actively. The people who structured themselves to survive Liberation Day did not get lucky. They spent years building knowledge and discipline that is available to you. It is what coin and context is for. The wealth gap that Liberation Day exposed is real. It is wide. It is growing.